But first, I just want to briefly talk to you about one of Mark's exercises, a one rein start. Can you tell us what this is, Mark, and why you use it?
A one range start, I found, well, there's so many different variations of it, but basically, we put all this effort into young horses, getting them to lead. You know, might be putting a little neck rope on a horse, and then a halter, and wherever that rope goes, the horse goes. That's the idea with good quality leading. If the rope goes still and hangs, the horse stands with it quietly. If the rope picks up and moves, and it doesn't matter which angle you walk off with that rope, they learn to lead. And then all of a sudden in training, what happens, a lot of people change to sort of what I call bending and legging. They start bending the horse, and then, you know, lateral and vertical flexion. And then all of a sudden they're squeezing the horse with their legs into a bend. And the whole concept of just following a feel through a lead rope starts to disappear. And I find that that's where the degradation or the mistrust of leading pressure starts to disappear as well. So for me, a one range start is just basically teaching horse how to lead. And basically you can pull an open rein and a lifted open rein and lead the horse over to the left. You can draw that rein back further and draw it back into a more come back and turn left. You can pick it up in towards your belly button and put a bend in your horse, and the horse walks the hind quarter over a bit. So one range start encompasses a lot of rein positions and stuff like that as it evolves into evolves and the horse understands more things. So, but basically, a horse, like a lot of problems I see in riding, is when a person picks up on a rein. Say they've been going along, kicking, get their horse going along with their legs, and those legs create energy and impulsion. What happens is the impulsion disappears if they can't get onto a turn because the horse has had so many one range stops or blocking with the reins, or in the groundwork blocking, asking the horse to go sideways, blocking, asking it to move its hip over with a leg or a stick on the ground, and all those sorts of things. And all that blocking with the reins causes a block in our horses. So the best way to fix this is a one range start, and the best way to stop that from happening is teach your horse to lead and create movement through the reins. So it's not accelerations as such, it's just more so when I pick up a rein, you follow that wherever it goes with your thoughts and your feet. So it really unlocks a lot of horses, unlocks so much potential in any horse, no matter what the discipline.
Okay, so I've got a question here from Holly, who's over in Tasmania, who has a lovely young quarter horse who she's had for about 7 months. Now, he's only 3.5 years old and he's Western pleasure trained. When she first got him, he seemed very quiet, and he still is, but she's run into problems getting him to go forwards. It doesn't matter if she's on the trail or in the arena. What happens is they get a little distance and then they stop and he won't budge. He does seem to be disconnected when she's training him, and no matter of whatever stimuli she uses seems to make a difference. So it's like he's on autopilot and not engaged at all. So she's tried your one rein starts to get to turn him and get his feet moving, and it's like he's locked in. It just doesn't work. She knows he's obviously shut down. In the end, she dismounts and she walks back home. So because this is her first young horse and also her first ever shutdown horse, she's quite aware that she doesn't want to keep adding pressure when things aren't working. He's a lovely pony. He's very kind. He's got a really kind eye. He's never done anything unsafe to her in the saddle. Couple of things though that she does point out: he does pin his ears flat back when she's brushing and handling him. He's very sensitive on his flanks and rear, and when she picks up his back feet, but absolutely no aggression. So at this point, she's just like some tips. She's just not quite sure how to proceed. She'd love your thoughts, and she doesn't want to create any more negative experiences for him.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a bit of work to do there. And unfortunately, I'd love to say Bob's your uncle, just do this and that, but a lot of these Western trained horses, especially in Western pleasure, they're really dulled down, but they've also had a lot of pressure on them. They have the spurs tap on them all the time, and they have a lot of rein transitions where the reins are sort of, get them to lower their head, bend, lower the head, so the reins are constantly would have been talking to them all the time until the head says, don't do that. Most of the times in a lot of training like that, the spurs say go and the reins say don't. So you've got a horse that's kind of doing the opposite of a one rein start. It just kind of dulls down in the reins. And they take a bit of work. And I've had horses that are really shut down that I've gone back to teach them to lead with a belly rope. Like, I mean, I put the belly rope on them and I've had to bump it to make them wake up and search. The hardest thing is the pressure has kind of shut them down and dulled them down. So somehow through some form of feel or pressure, you've got to get them to open up again. So one thing I would sort of start to look at doing is very close to your horse. Like I just had at the Western States Horse Expo, a horse that it was an interesting lesson because the horse came to the lesson as a rushy horse that says, oh, you know, the lesson I was supposed to do was, you know, how do I stop a horse from rushing? And I watched this horse walk and I said, well, I'm not even going to let it rush. I'm not even going to let it walk. I said, it doesn't know how to walk. So we did a leading lesson of, you know, under saddle and on the ground to say, this is how you lift your wither and you move softly, because I would have just been rewarding a hard on the forehand walk. And I think that's where you're going to have to go with your horses. You know, something on the ground where you can lift them up. So Western pleasure horses have been taught to put their head down, and they put their head down, they go sleepy, they're sort of heavy in their feet, and they lose that desire in the reins. So I would stand on the ground and I'd start to lift. So like I just have the horse short on the halter to start with, and I would ride it in the side pull. I wouldn't put a bit on it because they would have been knocked back so many times with a bit that they're just kind of gone like shut down in the mouth as well. And you also don't want to hurt their mouth. So with the side pull, I can put a fair bit of pressure on and weight and lift them up without them sort of hurting themselves or, you know, getting too stressed about that. So basically, I'll start to, like on the ground, I'll just have the horse and I'll just start to lift on that rope in the halter. And as they go to bury their head down, I'll just put a quick up bump like that. And I might like do a sharp kiss at the same time. And that'll shock them a little bit. And they go, that wasn't like a little electric fence, but they'll go, oh, I couldn't do that. That wasn't available. You see them sort of pick their head up a bit. And then I'll just lift the knot again. And as soon as they go to drive down, I'd go, hey, not available. Until they go, oh. And then you'll see them lift and wriggle their body a little bit and start to be alert. But the biggest thing, and I think the first thing you got to do before you even think about a one rein start, is get them to not bury their head down and start to pick up, create a bit of desire in the rein, because that mechanical mechanism of just putting their head down and hiding from the bit is what they tend to do. And that takes a bit of time, but that's education. Like, you can't do a one rein start if the horse just bends its head all the way to your boot and doesn't do anything, doesn't follow the rein. And the start of following a rein is lifting and getting awareness. So you're waking them up in the rein. And then in your leading lessons, when you're leading them around the paddock doing stuff like that, I would really pick up on that rope and get them to trot up and change directions and send them out on a long rope and then catch the rope and do a U-turn with them and walk in a new direction. So they're constantly going somewhere and following that rope, and they're starting to wake up just in your leading lessons. And then once they're awake a little bit, then you might go back to your one rein start, but this time put a lift in it. And if they go to bury around your boot, you'd sort of lift and get in and keep lifting until they pick their head up. Don't keep pulling to do the one rein start. Just sort of let them pick their head up again and go, oh, that didn't work, and then try again. And the idea with a one rein start with one of those really like shutdown horses is you're turning in the space of like an elevator. Like you know when there's two doors on an elevator, one at the front and one at the back, and you expect that door to open, but then suddenly the one behind you opens and you've got to turn all your suitcases around. Well, basically that's what you're doing. You're turning the horse to go out the elevator door behind you. You're not doing these big wide turns because they won't really do anything. And there's going to be a lot of lifting and where you're saying not available when the horse has when they go down, because that's half the problem. And yeah, if you can, people want to go to the legs all the time and kick them along, but if you did that, you'd have to just go to the mechanical aid which helped them go, which is just put spurs on them and get them to go. But if you can get the leading working, that fixes so many things, and it wakes them up because you're not using all your tools. But if you have to go back to a lot of leading on the ground and wake that leading up, so be it, until that horse is blinking and thinking and that sort of thing. But by the sounds of it, because the horse is shut down, there's a bunch of things that you can do. So with shut down horses, I asked them to do one very small thing and expect them to do it well, not just sort of put all this white noise on them. So as I say, lift the knot. If the horse doesn't blink its eye when you lift the knot, you might go, hey, wake up. And they go, oh, did you just touch the holder? Yes, I did. I touched the holder. You need to wake up. Not just dull out and sort of go dull when I touch pressure on you on the halter and then later on the side pull.
So you're really getting them to go into that training mindset.
Yeah. You're basically saying every time you touch them, wake up, can you feel that? Wake up, can you feel that? Until they start to search. Like a horse that I had at a clinic last year in Idaho, and it was interesting because the lady runs a horse rescue. So the one horse she had last year was really shut down. It's going a lot better, but it's always had a bit of a lameness. So from that, it took me 3 days to wake it up, and that was a horse that would fall over. It fell over on one of the owners that had it before her, and it fell over on an obstacle, and it just went down on its knees, wouldn't get up, just ate grass while the person's still sitting on it. That's how shut down it was, and it just grazed. Wouldn't even try to get up. And then when we woke it up, it was walking. She only had to squeeze it once, and it went around the whole arena without spurs, all that sort of thing. But it took a fair bit of me working and input to get it to wake up out of that space. And the next horse that I worked was the same. And in one lesson, this one woke up and got really soft in the reins, in the lead rope, that it was really sensitive. So it seemed like a big lesson, but I had to put a fair bit of like wake up in there to say, come out of that space. And that's something you might have to think about doing.